Today, I just spent 10 hours in this underwater city, and I'm going to extract the atoms of 21 little sisters in that time frame. And the reward of this challenge is this really cool boodle, which gives me some cool powers, such as this. Yo, dude, there's one right there right now. Oh no! If you are like me, a gamer, then you've probably played a lot of video games. Throughout the endless seas of video games, there is one game that managed to make a name of itself through its unique storytelling, unique setting, and gameplay. The game that allowed players to progress however they want. Maybe you play more like a strategist where you place traps and plan out how you're gonna do things, or maybe you just charge in.
Oh, that's crazy.
If you know Bioshock, you either play this game multiple times with multiple builds at different plasmids, or you have heard over the internet just how many people gush over this game. There is a good reason to love this game. It is the game of all time. Without some issues, of course, which I'll cover. But that doesn't change the fact that this game is made by one of the most passionate development companies ever. They were trying to be different and innovative instead of following what every other game company was doing. And this allowed them to make a game with the world building that makes video game essays cream. I'm going to be talking about Bioshock 1, but I will talk about the other games in the future. So if we want to talk about why Bioshock is loved today, we must first go back to the year 2007. Welcome to one of the golden years of video games. Crisis, Manhunt 2, Portal, Half-Life 2. 2007 was such a special time for gaming, and also how I got into gaming with Call of Duty Modern Warfare. So if you saw the name dummy_freak, that was me. A glorious time where people thought that gamers and weebs were weirdos, and that the news was saying that, quote, video games causes violence? Wait, what? And in the first-person shooter genre, or FPS for short, it was filled with World War II shooters or Modern Warfare stuff. And then there was a game that was being cooked that would have one of the most iconic openings of all time. How did this happen? Meet Ken Levine, a game developer that was one of 3 guys that founded Irrational Game Studio. And during this time, the last game that they finished was System Shock 2, which did not sell exactly well. The team just barely broke even, and they knew that if they wanted to make another game, it had to be something different. They were not Rockstar or Ubisoft or Nintendo or Valve or any of the big companies. They were a fairly small team, but they knew it and they had ambition. So Ken and his team started working on this new prototype. They wanted to make a game that had resemblance of System Shock 2 while also being its own thing. During the early stages of development, they were brainstorming ideas of how this could work. Maybe the game could focus more on RPG elements like System Shock 2, or maybe the game could focus more on the story or the gameplay, or how about both? The team finally had some core ideas settled out. The game was going to be dark and spooky. They wanted to add an enemy that would give a valuable resource to the player. And they also wanted to give that enemy a bodyguard so that getting those resources would pose a challenge. These enemies would be later become the iconic duo, the Big Daddy and the Little Sister. Irrational Games will be working non-stop on this new game on Unreal Engine 2.5. They developed enemies. This one's called a Splicer. They looked through some Art Deco buildings, and they did several reworks of the Big Daddies. By the way, all of this can be seen in the art direction room in the remastered version, which is very cool. Using what is available, they managed to cook up a game, and it was time to announce it. And sometime in 2007, this is what they had to show to the world. Somewhere beyond the sea, when people saw this, people were like, ooh, what is this? What is that? Cool powers? What is that thing? That big thing? I can't wait to fight it. And when the game was released, it was a success. Sold almost 2 million copies upon release, which doesn't sound impressive today, but back then, back in the ye olde days, that was a pretty good start of a new franchise. Bioshock was praised for having a unique setting, while other FPS shooters were more focused on the Modern Warfare military shooter, yeah! Rank up! Sergeant, Master Sergeant! And also, Bioshock was one of the few games during the time that had a morality-based system. Now, this system is fairly simple. Do you want to be evil or you want to be good? And I'm sorry, if you choose the wrong choice, I'm not judging you, but we won't get along. I'm just kidding, I still love you. The game is pretty old now, but somehow it's still being loved and praised today. And why is that the case? Well, it's through a combination of things, starting with the story. The game starts with us in the role of Jack. We are inside this plane, and this is the only time that Jack himself actually speaks.
Son, you're
Until, of course, disaster happens. We gain our consciousness back and we rise up to the sea and we are greeted to this sight. The game makes it pretty clear that we enter inside this lighthouse.
I am Andrew Ryan, and I'm here to ask you a question. Is a man not entitled to the sweat of his brow? No, says the man in Washington, it belongs to the poor. No, says the man in the Vatican, it belongs to God. No, says the man in Moscow, it belongs to everyone. I rejected those answers. Instead, I chose something different. I chose the impossible. I chose
Rapture, this beautiful utopian city that was made to escape all of the capitalism and the communists from the ground above. The city that was made to give everyone the freedom to act however they want. But unfortunately for us, we happen to arrive at the time where Rapture is in absolute chaos and ruins. Which is clearly shown by the time we dock into the entrance and we get to meet the fine residents of Rapture.
I beg you!
Would you kindly pick up that shortwave radio? I don't know how you survived
Meet
that plane
Atlas.
crash.
One of the very few people in the game that does not try to kill us as soon as they make eye contact. Our buddy Atlas here is going to be our tutorial guide. Also, I like how the game teaches the new player in the actual environment. And what I mean by that is that while in other games, you are placed in a linear training ground type area before you're chucked into the actual game itself, the game chucks us right into the action, while also teaching us how to play.
How do you like that, sister? Now, would you kindly find a crowbar or something?
We then later get our hands with these plasmids ourselves and we inject them and then we get some really cool powers.
Steady now. Your genetic code is being rewritten. Just hold on and everything will be fine.
Hey, you. You're finally awake.
Atlas tells us that he and his family wants to get out of this hellhole. I mean, who wouldn't? While we explore more of Rapture, meeting the fine residents of this fine city,
Wait, this is happening before and none. Why aren't you here? Why is it today and not then when you were warm and sweet? Why
oh that's crazy.
Plasmids changed everything. They destroyed our bodies, our minds. We couldn't handle it. the whole city went to hell.
And soon enough, we get a better look of how these big daddies fight, and as we get deeper to the city, Mr. Ryan himself talks to us.
Oh, Christ! You're trapped! Gonna try to override the exit from here.
So tell me, friend, which one of the bitches sent you? The KGB wolf or the CIA jackal? Here's the news. Rapture isn't some sunken ship for you to plunder. And Andrew Ryan isn't a giddy socialite who can be slapped around by government muscle. And with that, farewell. Or das Vidania,
We then make contact with one lone little sister, and it's at this point the game introduces us to the morality system. Tanaban, this fine lady over here,
Stay away from her or it is you who will be shot next.
tells us that we probably shouldn't harvest the organs of these little sisters, and tells us to instead turn them into human and save them.
Thank you.
But Atlas, on the other hand, believes that these little sisters are a lost cause and that we might as well just harvest their organs. Whatever the player chooses, it will affect the ending of the game. As the vents fall down, we manage to meet up with Atlas. Okay, I guess we're gonna go to Mr. Ryan ourselves. The journey to meet up with Atlas puts us to different areas of Rapture. Here is the medical facility, here's where all of the park environmental stuff goes on, here's the entertainment area, and there are several characters that we come across. Some are friendly, and some are not. A lot of them are not friendly. But at this point, it's pretty straightforward. We meet Mr. Ryan, and things happen. Quite a few things happen actually. Once we reach the ending of the game, depending on what you did to the little sisters, you will get two different endings. If we save all of the sisters, then we basically adopt them and give them a second chance in life. But if we harvest them like the psychopath we are, we basically become a power-hungry tyrant and start to rule over the world. And by the way, there isn't really an in-between. It's either you're a good guy or you're a bad guy. And if I were to keep talking about the story, it would take me ages to go through it. And what I'll say is that Bioshock's story is one of the most immersive stories I've ever experienced. And the reason why the story is so well done is through the careful work. World-building is such an important part into making a game last forever. It's why games like Five Nights at Freddy's has a huge fan base. Even though I personally do not know anyone that actually plays the game, it's the world building that attracts people towards that media. It's why every single From Software game is loved. Even the considered worst Souls game is still respected because of the world building. By focusing on building a world that makes it feel alive and lived in, that is what makes a game last a pretty long time. If the game just lore dumps me through endless dialogue cutscenes, I'm just gonna quickly read the subtitles and just skip along unless it is actually done really well. But if the game hints the lore through its environment, then I'm gonna look through every nook and cranny of that game and trying to figure out how this relates to the world and what might have happened here. Even though in the game we are playing during the most chaotic moment of Rapture, all of the ads, the fancy masks, the vendors gives us an idea of how Ryan wanted to show this world. Paired up with the amount of audio logs that we find across the game, and this creates a much darker game that we see from the surface. It gives every single frame its own story. These couples actually committed suicide because they witnessed their little girl turn into a little sister.
We saw our Masha today. We barely recognize her. She was drawing blood out of a corpse by Fontaine Fisheries. Masha!
This woman was murdered by her husband, which, plot alert, she is our mother.
That creepy Dr. Tannenbaum promised me it wasn't gonna be a real pregnancy. They just take the egg out once Mr. Ryan and I had... Oh, I needed the money so bad. But Mr. Ryan's gonna be so mad at me.
This guy got drilled to death, not because he was targeted, but because one of the big daddies noticed him hit one of the little sisters. Small little details such as the big daddies only pushing you away if you don't engage with them, or seeing the little sisters harvesting Adam makes this game feel so much more alive. Irrational Games did not want to tell you what the world was like, they wanted to show you what the world is like. And the fact that they managed to do all of this combined with the game. You got your main stuff like guns and melee and all that. The shooting is somewhat dated, but it is a pretty old game, so I forgive the game for that. There are different vendors and shops scattered across the map where you can buy resources or upgrade your weapons or unlock more plasmids. I mainly just get the hacking tool because I have no patience for hacking. The hacking of this game is basically a random set of pipes where you rearrange them so that one end goes through the other end. But I do not have the patience for this, so I just use the hacking tool or just buy it out. Which thank God the game has that. Now some people may not want to hack and that's fine, but I personally believe that hacking does increase your survivability. But if you do die, no worries. There is no resetting level or progression loss. You simply just resurrect in the nearest vital chamber. Now that does mean that there is no consequence in dying, so in theory you could just play in the hardest difficulty and just keep on going and going until you manage to kill whatever you need to kill. But of course, everyone knows what makes Bioshock's gameplay so special. The plasmids, the cool powers. And this isn't just some gimmick, the plasmids actually have some really cool usage. They actually interact with the world itself. Some doors require electricity to open them. Some areas need fire to melt away the ice. And the way the game is set up, it feels like a sandbox game where you get to experiment all these different powers. I use these traps to give me some breathing room. I use this target dummy to blow off some steam on myself. And another thing I appreciate about this game is that the game isn't super handholdy. My personal favorite part is that when you get your fire-bending powers, the game recommends you to use those powers on an oil leak nearby. But you don't have to do that. You can just whack everyone in the head, which doesn't rule the best result, but that is an option that you can do. Now there are some issues with the enemy AI, such as how sometimes the pathway is just a bit wonky. And also how all of the enemies basically turn into bullet sponges towards the end of the game, which I personally do not like this change. But it doesn't change the fact that this game is well thought out through the environment, through the gameplay, through each of the character designs. What Bioshock did was showing how to effectively combine gameplay and story to create an overall immersive experience. And Bioshock would later inspire several other games down the line. Deus Ex, Dishonored, Atomic Heart, and several other games took inspiration because of Bioshock. Now I could go on and on about Bioshock, but it would take ages for me to finish this video. Now if you enjoyed this video and the stuff I make, please subscribe and hit the like button and all that stuff. And if you're curious about when the next video is coming out, it's coming out in